Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm chatting with Lobo Tiggre from the Independent Speculator. In this interview, we discuss the current junior mining environment and what it's like to actually successfully move a project forward, as well as where Lobo thinks that the price of silver and uranium could be heading. All right, everybody, enjoy the interview. Lobo, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be back on the show.
So pre-interview, we were just talking AI, and it just made me think of a conversation I had yesterday with a friend where we were talking about back in the days of cannabis stocks. There was one company that when I was naive enough as a retail investor, and I was thinking about sell side research as an actual real thing that actually meant something from an investment bank. I remember reading a report on a company called Tilt Holdings. I forget the name of the analyst at Canaccord who wrote the report, but it was like a 70-page report, and it was absolutely incoherent. It was just like, what is this company trying to do? What
Maybe
is
he was
happening
sampling the
here?
product.
But here's simply put what happened. There were some large investors in each of these four different assets. They mushed them together like a Frankenstein, and then this analyst who was paid by Canaccord to put out a report just went and copy and pasted a bunch of stuff from a bunch of sources into one report. Not well written, not coherent. And if any investor wanted to understand what the company did, it didn't make any sense. As a former high school teacher, if I was grading that paper, it would have been like a D, as in, I know you plagiarized most of this. And that brings me to AI. I feel like that guy today would be so in such a great position because he could give all that information to Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or pick whichever one you want to use. And presto, within like less than a minute, he'd have his analyst report, and it would have been literally 100 times more coherent than what he wrote. So I'm curious for you, as somebody who runs the Independent Speculator, how much does AI play a role in what you do in your research, with your staff? How much are you using it these days?
There's so many directions we could go from this. But when it first came out, I told my team that I would fire anybody that used that tool or such a tool. And now I've actually reversed that. And we have a project to see if we can come up with an AI tool to help us with our research. But they're actually not contradictory, because obviously these things need adult supervision, or rather they need human supervision. But the comment we were just saying offline is that somebody interviewed me once and they sent me a bio for my approval, which they had used a version of Bard to research. And there was literally nothing in the thing that was correct, besides that my clients trust me. But it made up where I went to school and all kinds of things. It just completely hallucinated. And if you didn't know me, you wouldn't know that. It sounded good. One of these things about AI hallucinations is that they hallucinate in perfect English. So, by the way, proofreaders of the world, your jobs are numbered. So this is a real thing. There are applications already now. There are jobs that are going away now because of this. So I'm not poo-pooing the whole idea. But I like Wozniak's way of saying this. I have AI, actual intelligence. you know, uh, so it will have its time. It will mature as a technology, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of money to be made on this. I'm also pretty sure I'm not the guy who's going to pick the Amazon of AI, whoever that's going to be. And I'm not even going to say, oh, it's safe to go with NVIDIA as the current leader. Well, any current leader is always ripe for dethroning it. But B, who knows who's working on an NVIDIA killer chip that does the same thing for 1/100th the energy amount or something, which could change the landscape dramatically. I don't know that. And I don't think any average investor does. And the people who would be in a position to know that, you can't trust them because they all say, oh, yeah, we've got the next greatest thing, right? So I don't know where you want to go from that, but the key takeaways are it's real, it's happening, it matters, but it's a minefield for investors to be very careful.
That sparked another thought though, where you finish there. And that's this idea of trying to learn from talking to other AI companies is the worst way to learn. And that's actually the way that I went about learning about junior mining, by the way. I talked to CEOs and GOs,
My
and one thing
condolences.
that and one thing that I've learned from that, first off, if you have a company you like or a project you like and you take it to a geo and the geo tells you it's crap, don't take that to heart. right? Like maybe if you have a geo that you absolutely trust, who's totally impartial and objective and has concrete reasoning, that's one thing. But all these different geos that work in the sort of the small cap arena and CEOs, they've all got their own projects. They've already got, vested interest in things that has sort of formed their own beliefs. It's not that they're necessarily lying to you, it's just that they're telling you their perspective, and it's shaped by what they own, what they're working on, and ultimately how they're going to make money. And you're also told a story where in their head they're like, I got to tell you this narrative because that's the narrative that works the best for me. But when you're trying to just educate yourself and learn about mining, it's really a terrible way to go about trying to understand mining, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of like democracy is the worst system except for all the rest kind of thing. Like, what else are you going to do? And I'm not saying therefore believe everybody, but you got to start somewhere. And starting with the company presentation and then asking good questions is important. But yes, you're absolutely right. They all have an agenda, even the most honest ones. Right? Nobody's going to come out and tell you all the worst things about their company first. And they all have problems. If mining companies press released every problem they ever had, I don't think any mine would ever get built because it's one nonstop process of problem solving, one thing after another. About the trash talking, it is funny. Maybe this is not highly actionable for the average investor, but if it takes a bottle of whiskey and an evening over the campfire to get the stories to come out about other companies, they might be more true. If they start trash talking their competitors right away, that might be more of an agenda on their part. But even so, things come out. If the geologist looks you in the eye and says, I worked on that project before, and one of the drillers raped one of the villagers, and there are serious social issue problems there. And that's a literal story, by the way. So, that can alert you to something, and you can verify that yourself on the ground, or you can be sensitive to that issue if you go there. But to be aware both of the propensity to trash talk and the propensity to gild the lily on your own side, it's absolutely there. There is nobody who's honestly straight from the company side. It's not their job to be. It's their job to sell you something. And you could say, oh, then I'm not playing. I'm going to take my marbles and go home. Well, you'll leave a lot of money on the table if you do that. You can do that, or you can just understand there's a table here. They're on one side, I'm on the other. We're not best friends. It's my job to understand that they're on the other side of the table. I have to do my own due diligence or hire an independent third party who can help me with that.
It isn't junior mining just such a funny space though, because there's so many projects that really are probably economic if somebody just had an infinite bank account to just move them forward. But when we're talking about this space that is so starved for capital, and then it's like you got all these people on the street that are talking about projects, and you need the right leadership that can go out and get that capital and move the project forward. That it turns into a world where you're not
actually no. Let me jump in. I'm going to push back on that. No, I don't think so. I mean, the better projects, they find capital. In the very worst market, when nobody cares, everything is hated. People hate commodities. People like Rick Roll, that famous loan shark, laser guided loan shark. He's out there with his checkbook, and he'll fund you. You got a world class deposit, something big enough to matter. Obviously, high margin. Sure, he'll ask you for an arm and a leg, or if he really likes you, maybe just the leg, right? But the money's there. If the project is good enough, even in the crappiest market, which is a technical description, right? The money is there for the better project. So when companies tell you, oh, we got this great project, but just market conditions, we can't raise money, they're telling you it's not such a great project.
It's thought provoking because, like, let's just say you go to Beaver Creek and you meet with the 100 gold companies that are there. That's the story with like 80% of them is the market's really tough. We're depressed.
But think about that. Here we are, $2,700 gold. And the story is, oh, this is a crappy market. We can't raise money. That just doesn't pass the smell test.
It's certainly harder though when like I mean, like you're basically telling me that there's a scenario where there's Rick Rule. if Rick Rule decides he doesn't want to move forward, you can't come to terms with Rick Rule for whatever reason he doesn't like your project. How many other Rick Rules are there for you to go to?
No, you get another project. Sorry, to be so brutal here, but you can't fall in love with these things. And the I'm a due diligence guy, and I try to go to every project I can before I invest. That's what I do. I'm boot leather, rock hammer in hand. Got one right here. But I'm just one guy. Well, no, actually, now I have a team. But I don't have the capacity to do due diligence of your, Orion Capitals or your Wheatons or somebody that have millions of dollars to put into this, and they can send a whole team of engineers and geos down there to proof these stories. So, even though I try and I do my best, my claim to fame isn't that I'm always right. My claim to fame is that I'm not for sale. There's no amount of money a company can give me to give them a thumbs up when they deserve a thumbs down. But even at that level, I mean, there's what I'm saying is it's not just Rick Rule. There are other sources of money. But if the smart money won't invest in your project, there's something wrong with your project. And these guys, I can go and I can proof the story. I can see if there's a problem with the local villagers and so on. If they're burning the CEO in effigy, I can do that sort of thing. I can look at the mine. I recognize certain minerals. If they say we have chalcopyrite and I don't see it, I could call BS on that. But the kind of due diligence these guys can do, and if they're saying no, there's something there. Maybe there's something in the metallurgy. Maybe there's excessive water flow. They're going to spend more money pumping water than mining, right? Maybe there's something else that they can tell that the average retail investor can't tell. So, I mean, to think that you're going to sit at home and notice something on your little spreadsheet that the Wheatons of the world have missed, or the Sprots of the world have missed, I think that's hubris. So if the smart money is telling you there's a problem with this project, then maybe you should listen to the smart money. Maybe you should listen to another project. And if you're a company, instead of trying to sell something that just won't fly, take what capital you have, rotate, find something better.
So, okay. So you mentioned you're a boots on the ground guy. You like to go and kick rocks and see properties. What is it that you're looking for when like I've been on a series of site visits. One of my favorite questions, Lobo, that I never get a good answer to when I ask the geos on site is, what are we looking for? What minerals get us excited when we see on the surface? And I feel like they're always really cagey about answering that. And I don't know if it's because they don't want people to know what they're looking for, or if it's just because they're just playing a guessing game. But what is it that you're looking for when you go on site visits and you're looking at projects?
Okay, well, two things. One is they should be able to answer that question. And if you have something, well, if you've got a vein and it's a quartz vein that has gold silver mineralization in that, it's pretty obvious. And they will usually lay out drill core, and they'll say, here's published assays, here's what we hit. And then they'll show you, here's the current drilling, and you'll see something that looks just like that. Right? But you don't know what the assays are, but you have a pretty good guess that they're hitting the right stuff. You can see it in the drill core. So that's what we're looking for, more of what we have. Or even if they have a geophysical target, let's say they're looking for a big copper porphyry, what would be, well, we'd be looking for, at the very least, porphyry textures in the rock when we come out, hopefully some pyrite, maybe some chalcopyrite in there. It shouldn't be that difficult. As far as what I'm looking for, as I just said, I'm not sure I'm helping myself any as a due diligence guy here. I am building a team. We are always looking for improvement. But I'm mostly looking for bullshit. Like I'm not personally a mine engineer. I'm not a PhD geologist. So I can't, lick the rocks and tell you what they're made out of the way some guys can. And I've seen people do that, by the way. That's not just a story, which is why the engineers pee on the rocks, but let's not go there. If they say we have A and it's clearly not A, or if they say the locals love us, but they have roadblocks on my way to the mine, then that's clearly BS. And there are times when I will go in advance and then return again with management to give them a chance to either, be honest with me or give them plenty of rope to hang themselves with. I have done that. Sorry, it's true. If I can, at the very least, fail to disprove the story on a due diligence trip, then that counts for a lot with me. The other thing, though, is that, I've been doing this for a couple of decades. I have a network in the field. I have a lot of people that I do trust, and I get triangulation. I also get help, by the way. This trash talking is one thing. There's another thing is if there's somebody that I've known for years and I say, I'm going to look at this style of deposit, it's a CRD, whatever, what should I ask? They'll tell me, oh, this is what I'd want to see, da, 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 da. And that helps me to ask the right questions. But you know what? Even the smartest money in the world can fund $1 billion into a mine build and then have the plant not work. So you shouldn't come to the conclusion, oh, if I don't have $1 billion to spend researching this, I shouldn't bother. That's not the point. So I'm comfortable with just going, giving them an opportunity to shoot themselves in the foot, and I'm happy if they fail. And seeing if the story that I hear or see on the PowerPoint is the same on the ground, right? And there's just so much that you can see. The PowerPoint will show this beautiful deposit right there, and they won't show the park, the national park right next to it, or maybe a beautiful glacier right on the other side of the valley, or an essential water reservoir for a nearby town or something like that. You don't have to be a PhD to see that. Just go there. Like if you can stand on a deposit and see a national park, a recreation center down the hill, that's an issue.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I was told once from, we'll say, top guy from one of the top mining publishers in the world. I don't know if he wants me to throw this anecdote out there, but he's been on hundreds of site visits. He said that just talking to the workers at a camp, the geo consultants and all those people who aren't necessarily investors in the project, you can learn a wealth of information from them because for some reason they're just usually typically pretty honest about what's happening. Have you found that?
Yeah, if you talk to the guys toting the drill core boxes up and down the mountain, or the drivers and things, I have found that. And I personally, I speak Spanish and French fluently. Spanish works throughout Latin America. French works for much of West Africa. And being able to talk to the people without having to filter it through management is a huge advantage. That's been very useful to me. I'm not useful in Mandarin. I'd have to have a company hired translator to help me there in China. But in a lot of the countries that I'm willing to invest in, I speak the language, and that helps.
Okay, so Lobo, since we last spoke, silver seems to still have momentum. Last time we talked, I believe you're pretty bullish on silver. Where do you think we're heading from here? What's your read on the silver market right now?
Fun of you to start with silver. So there's several things. I am cautious about silver, and there's a lot of silver uber bulls that like to hate me for that, my nickname of Darth Silver and all that stuff. But I'm not a silver bear. When I say I'm cautious, that doesn't mean I'm predicting lower prices. It is a mathematically demonstrable fact. The statistics show that silver has been correlating with copper more closely than gold in recent years, in recent times. The industrial use case for silver has increased, whereas the industrial use cases of gold have always been small and basically negligible. Whereas the use for silver, back when I started in this business, people were worried about photography going away and being replaced by digital photography. And it's going to be the end of the world for silver because film won't be made with silver anymore. But none of those people foresaw the photovoltaic panels taking over, the solar panels becoming the huge source of demand that it is. But just as we're recording, just yesterday, gold was down about 1%, silver was down 4%. And industrial minerals were down, stocks were down. There was disappointing news about the new stimulus from China. Now, why would that affect silver disproportionately to gold? Because of its industrial aspect. So there's good news and bad news here. I think that the world is in a deepening global recession. I don't think the US will be spared. It's possible that Lynn Alden's fiscal dominance will blunt that. It's possible that it might even make it so that we go into a reflationary boom without the hard landing that I've been expecting, though I still think that's unlikely. I think it'll take a shock. But anyway, what I'm saying is until that's resolved, the fact that silver's industrial aspect weighs and drives heavily in its price action is material. And until that's resolved, I'm cautious about silver. That said, in this year that we've got two hot wars in the world, either of which could become World War III, we have seen silver correlating again more highly with gold and tracking gold very specifically on days where the news was good for safe haven monetary metals and not industrial metals, right? When you see silver and gold go up and the dollar and copper and oil go down, then that tells you that silver still is money in much of the world. It's still treated as a monetary asset and a safe haven asset. And that's very encouraging. So silver is still on my shopping list right now, as is gold, but I feel more comfortable right now. If I had two choices and all things were equal, but one was gold and one was silver, and I could only buy one, I'd buy the gold one because I'm more worried about silver ahead of this resolution of the hard landing and the scales falling from their eyes, all that stuff. But on the other side, and that doesn't mean I wouldn't buy a silver play. If the only great speculation I could find now was a great silver one, sure, I'd go there, just cautiously. But on the other side, once either the recession has done its worst, or I've been proved wrong and team soft landing or no landing was right and it's just off to the next happy, joy days, well, then I see more upside in silver than gold. Silver will benefit from that possible headwind of industrial demand going down in the recession, becomes a tailwind in the reflationary boom that gold does not enjoy. So I'm actually very bullish on silver going ahead, but just in the nearest term, I'm more cautious about my acquisitions.
What's your read on uranium right now? I know you've largely been on point with uranium when we've asked you about it before. Back I think at the beginning of 2023, you said that uranium was going to have a great 2023, and it did. Where are you seeing the uranium market right now?
Yeah, you're skipping over all the hate I got for saying in early 2024 that it was going to correct, and that was unfortunately for many uranium investors right as well. And by the way, I don't claim to have a silver ball. I get many things wrong, but I was right about both of those calls. So the answer is uranium has corrected. It came down to meet more or less the long-term contract price, and then it bounced off that. And we're now looking at a rebound. That doesn't mean it has to go up from here. We're at the price at which the better uranium mines make money, and the current uranium price is already, like Rick likes to say, Rick Rule, high prices cure high prices. That is visibly happening now. That price that we're at now, correction and all, is enough to incent the miners to bring mothball mines back online, to start developing projects earlier in their pipeline, for the juniors with the higher margin projects to build them. That is all happening right now. And I think that's causing some questions, qualms, uncertainty in the market. But our own research, and there's a free uranium report on our website, our own research is that this won't be enough. If all the low-hanging fruit is picked successfully, it still won't be enough. And when does everything ever work exactly as planned? The world's largest uranium producer is having trouble ramping up. Pretty much all of the other uranium projects that we've heard about that are coming online now, they've all seen delays. So I think it's a mistake to think that all the low-hanging fruit is going to be picked. But even if it is, it's not enough. So I am very bullish on uranium. I think it's very encouraging that spot bounced off long-term contract, because that hasn't rolled over. Long-term contract keeps marching upwards, and that's really interesting. And maybe the one other thing to really focus on here is that uranium is in a recession resistant. If I'm right about the hard landing becoming undeniable and a bit of panic before the free money helicopters really fly with gusto, then that would be bad for energy minerals in general. But in the last 3 of the last 4 recessions, uranium has traded sideways to up. And the fourth one was 2008, where uranium had already started correcting in 2007, so arguably was not down because of the recession. And that makes sense. Uranium provides, nuclear energy as baseload power, the sort of thing you use for hospitals and airports, and the sort of thing you don't want turning off, right? 24/7, 365. So it makes sense to me. And it's very encouraging to see that, the market is actually looks like, no promises, but it looks like it has carved out a bottom. The very most recent purchase that I've made in my own portfolio was a uranium stock. I am not waiting to see if the recession has done its worst or anything like that. I am willing to put more money into any great uranium picks I've missed right now.
Well, Lobo, I've actually gone over time, so I can't ask you more questions, but I got to ask you this. For our audience who wants more of your commentary, where can they go to?
Sure. Independentspeculator.com. Quick version is we have a free weekly letter. You may or may not like the way I think. You can find out by subscribing, but I do promise that we won't spam you with a flood of advertisements. You get one email per week, and that's it.
Lobo, thanks as always for hopping on here. Our audience loves it when you hop on here, and hopefully you'll keep coming back on in the future.
Thank you. Happy to do so.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this interview, please smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Also, let me know what you think in the comment section. Thanks, everyone.